Good afternoon. I'm so pleased to welcome you to the Economic Club of Indiana. Thank you all for joining us today. We are the place to be challenged by prominent speakers and advance great ideas, and thanks to all of you for being part of it. My name is Kathy Langham, and I am President and CEO of Langham Logistics. I'm also very honored to serve as President of the Economic Club of Indiana for the current season. Before introducing today's guest, I'd like to take a moment and thank our outstanding group of platinum sponsors. They have been highlighted at the beginning of today's webinar, as well as on the virtual banner behind me. Last season, many of our luncheons were the top trending events on Twitter. Let's keep it going by expanding today's conversation through social media. So, if you haven't already, get out your phones now and post, tweet, or like us so that all your friends will know that you are involved in the Economic Club of Indiana. The Economic Club Twitter handle is @EconomicClubIN. We're also tweeting using the hashtag EconLunch. Now this is new. Please join us after the Q&A portion of our presentation today, if you have 15 minutes, for the conversation after the conversation, a discussion led by Leadership Indianapolis, Rebecca Hutton, featuring local leaders within our community discussing the remarks today. I'm very pleased and honored to introduce this month's speaker, journalist and author Alilia Bundles. Alilia Bundles is an award-winning journalist and author, as well as the founder of the Madam Walker Family Archives. A former network television news executive and producer for 30 years at NBC and then at ABC News, she has also appeared on CBS, PBS, C-SPAN, NPR, and the BBC. Alilia is also a graduate of North Central High School in Indianapolis. As an author, she has written biographies about amazing women in her family, entrepreneur Madam C.J. Walker and Harlem Renaissance icon Alilia Walker. On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker is a New York Times notable book and served as the nonfiction source for Self-Made, the fictionalized 4-part Netflix series starring Oscar-winning Octavia Spencer that premiered in March. Bundles is now at work on her 5th book, The Joy Goddess of Harlem, Alilia Walker and the Harlem Renaissance, about her great-grandmother whose parties, arts patronage, and travels helped define the era. Audience, we want you to be part of the conversation. As we hear remarks today from Alilia, we will open the chat feature for questions to be directed to her. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Bundles.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It's really great to be here, and a shout out to my other North Central friend, Deborah Daniels, who is on the Economic Club board. I'm so glad this day has finally arrived, but just really regret that I can't be there in person to get the vibrations from the room. Chancellor Padar first extended the invitation to me in April 2018, and our intention at that time was to celebrate the renovation of the Madam Walker Legacy Center and its partnership with IUPUI, as well as to acknowledge the longtime support of the Lilly Endowment. Finally, everything was set for March 20th of this year, coincidentally the same day the Netflix series inspired by my Madam Walker biography was set to premiere. The planets seemed perfectly aligned, and then came COVID. During the first week of March, we could count the number of known coronavirus cases in Indianapolis on one hand. As late as March 13th, Chris Gall, Judith Thomas, and I were trying to figure out if Octavia Spencer could be safe from the virus if she flew to Indianapolis on a private plane for a screening of the film. But day by day, the pandemic disrupted our lives. I was in New York with plans to see Blair Underwood in a Soldier's play the night Broadway shut down. Across the country, restaurants closed, schools went online, Zoom became a way of life. And the fissures in our society were exposed. People of color were disproportionately affected. We saw clearly how race and ethnicity determined access to healthcare and exposure to the virus. We saw the consequences of those disparities on mortality and survival rates. As business owners and civic leaders, you have had to adjust. You've learned new things about communicating with employees and about supply chain vulnerability. In addition to the pandemic and an uneven economic recovery, we are in the midst of a racial reckoning. George Floyd's murder in May was a wake-up call and a revelation for people who really had never paid that much attention, though some of us had been paying attention for a long time. This summer, hundreds of thousands of people, many of whom had once been wary of Black Lives Matter, began to feel some compassion and joined marches all over the world. Corporations, law firms, universities, and philanthropic institutions were forced to examine their policies. And then there was the election, but I'm not even going to go there. So while I'm here today to celebrate the partnership between IUPUI and the Madam Walker Legacy Center, I also am a journalist, a student of history, and a person who cares deeply about the future of my hometown. I am very aware that we are at a very different moment than we were 8.5 months ago when my talk was originally scheduled. And I can't help but see the connection between IUPUI and the Madam Walker Legacy Center and the future of our city. Today, I'd like to offer some ways to approach how we recalibrate our thinking about our city's past and about the future of Indiana Avenue. As I prepared for today's talk, I watched several of the previous Economic Club keynotes. I could see that they were sometimes a mix between a TED Talk, a masterclass, and a case study. I was particularly drawn to Cummins CEO Tom Linebarger's focus on inequality because it is so relevant right now as we think about a post-pandemic economy and society. I also watched the May 2019 presentation from LISC CEO Maurice Jones. Indianapolis, he said, ranks 48th in American cities for economic mobility. Even before the pandemic-induced recession, Black family household wealth in Indianapolis was $9,000 compared to $126,000 for white families. Like Tom Linebarger, I hope we can use this moment of crisis as an opportunity for a reset. Visionary leaders critique and analyze the disruption that a crisis creates, then use the data to reimagine a more effective outcome. Visionary leaders don't default to conventional and formulaic solutions. The path forward is shaped by courageous leaders who are adept at including and engaging stakeholders who bring a diversity of thought and lived experience. A closed process that includes only the usual suspects may be expedient, but such an approach creates a flawed and unsustainable outcome. I was pleased when Chancellor Padar and Joyce Rogers, the chair of the Walker Board, first told me about the proposed Walker IUPUI partnership. 3 years later, it is exciting to see the renovation and to know that IUPUI's Africana Studies Center will soon be housed at the Walker. When I listened to President McRobbie's October Economic Club talk, I couldn't help but think about the possibilities for collaboration with the Fairbanks School of Public Health, the Luddy School of Informatics, the Lilly School of Philanthropy, the Ashkenazi School of Art, Architecture, and Design, and the Kelly School of Business, not just for the Walker, but for the surrounding community. I already see some fruits of that partnership. It was an honor to be a part of the Central Indiana Community Foundation's Inclusive City event in October with Chancellor Padar, when he acknowledged the Black residents who had lived, worshiped, socialized, and shopped in the neighborhood where IUPUI and the IU Medical Center now stand. Equally important was his reminder of the Miami and other indigenous people whose ancestral lands Indianapolis now occupies. His announcement of a scholarship program to benefit the descendants of people whose homes were demolished to make way for IUPUI's expansion is a generous gesture toward reconciliation and an important step in what will be a long process of building mutual trust and making a space for healing. As a great urban university, IUPUI already is engaged in the kind of reckoning that is taking place on campuses across America. As other institutions have examined their legacies of slavery, IUPUI is examining how it benefited from the legacy of racial discrimination that is embedded in federal housing policies, banking practices, and city government initiatives that destroyed historic Black neighborhoods and contributed to disparities in public school education and housing quality in our city. My connection to what will always be for me the Walker Building begins with my mother, Alilia May Perry Bundles, who was vice president of the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company until her death in 1976. Madam Walker, my great-great-grandmother, moved to Indianapolis because of the thriving Black business community that was centered along Indiana Avenue. The city's central location and extensive train network made it easy to ship her hair care products to customers all over the United States. Within a few years, she began acquiring the triangular-shaped property where the Walker Legacy Center now stands. When the building opened in 1927, it was a haven for Indianapolis's Black community and a source of national pride, with first-run movies in a state-of-the-art theater, a ballroom, a restaurant, a drugstore, medical offices, a beauty salon, a beauty school, and a factory. It is important, though, to understand the role that racial segregation played in its creation. There is a theater in the building because Madam Walker was denied entry into a downtown Indianapolis movie house in 1914. The services the building offered were necessary and provided a safe space for the city's Black residents at a time when the Ku Klux Klan was very much a part of local politics. But the people who were pushed to this area of the Mile Square were resilient and made the best of their circumstances. Where others now see concrete and weeds on the north side of IUPUI's campus and to the west of the Walker Center, I see C. Ferguson's bowling alley and imagine childhood birthday parties. I remember Forrest Jones's barbecue heaven, Baird's Cleaners, and Arlene's House of Music. This was Black entrepreneurship that created generational wealth. The demise of those businesses destroyed the possibility for continued economic development in the area. I have fond memories of arriving at 617 Indiana Avenue with my mother in her Black 1955 Mercury and riding up the elevator to her fourth floor office where I banged away on her typewriter and adding machine. I remember the women who worked in the factory and the office and the beauty salon. But that narrative of success began to change in 1958 when the Indianapolis Redevelopment Commission unveiled a master plan that included the construction of I-65 and the acquisition of a plan that created the property for IUPUI and the medical center. It is worth noting that there were no Black people in the drawings of shoppers, tourists, and workers in that report. And I hope you understand when I say I don't believe this was just a coincidence. The city called it slum clearance and urban renewal. But when we heard our parents talk about what was happening, they quoted James Baldwin, who labeled it Negro removal. In the name of progress to beautify Indianapolis, there was a great deal of collateral damage. Much of what I remember as a child is gone. I realize that most Indianapolis residents and people who have moved to the city in the last several decades have no idea about that history and the people whose legacy has been physically erased. If you don't know what was there, you can't be blamed for seeing the parking lots as an eyesore and a blank slate waiting to be developed. But those who do know the history see something else entirely, which is why there has been such strong and widespread opposition to an apartment building that was proposed in the 700 block of Indiana Avenue. Wealthy people with political power oppose development projects all the time, but this was a protest of a different kind and something that had been building for 6 decades. The opposition was mounted by the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the people who had been displaced during the 1960s and 1970s. Members of Reclaim Indiana Avenue began asking questions about why Massachusetts Avenue, Virginia Avenue, and Fountain Square had been revitalized, but not Indiana Avenue. They did their research and learned that only the 500 block of Indiana Avenue had been designated a historic district, but not the 600 and 700 blocks. What happened in Indianapolis happened in hundreds of cities across America because of redlining that led to intentional disinvestment in communities of color. Black and Latino neighborhoods were bulldozed rather than preserved because the residents lacked political power to resist. Rather than me go off into a long discourse about this very important point and why this happened, I'd like to recommend Richard Rothstein's book, The Color of Law, for anyone who'd like to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. There are other cities that have made the commitment to revitalize these historic districts. Sweet Auburn in Atlanta and the Civil Rights Historic District in Birmingham are 2 that come to mind. My friend Brent Leggs, the executive director of the National Trust for Historic Preservation's African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, is leading transformative investment in the revitalization and preservation of these neighborhoods that tell a vital piece of American history. It's essential that this erasure and this loss and the generational pain it has caused be acknowledged. As James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I am encouraged by much of what I see in Indianapolis. The work that Brian Payne and his team at CICF are doing with their Inclusive City Initiative and the work IUPUI is doing with its Action Committee give me hope. The Indiana Historical Society's recent 4-part series on redlining has forced us to face some difficult truths about our past. And I'm particularly proud of the Historical Society's Madam Walker exhibit, which is so popular, it's been extended to 2023. During the summer, Governor Holcomb said, "We now stand at an inflection point, and we have an opportunity to acknowledge those past wrongs, learn from our history, and admit where we've come up short of our ideals." I'm grateful that many institutions and organizations in Indianapolis have embraced Madam Walker. It was an honor to accept the Bill McGowan Award from Visit Indy on her behalf 2 years ago. I love seeing my friend Sonia Clark's massive Madam Walker art installation in the lobby of the Alexander Hotel. I have joined forces with a group of Indianapolis natives who are contributing our time and expertise to a plan to reimagine the development of Indiana Avenue. Our agenda is to create something that is worthy of Indianapolis's aspirations as a destination city. I encourage you to take a look at our design on a video from a session hosted last month by the African American Landmarks Committee of Indiana Landmarks. It's on YouTube. You just have to type in Indiana Avenue Matters and it will pop up. I loved what Deborah Burke said in her Economic Club conversation about her firm's design for the Cummins building on Market Street. Design, she said, can change a city's dynamic and growth. She talked about daylight, quality of life, walkability, and beautiful design. That's what we want for Indiana Avenue. I want the Madam Walker Legacy Center to survive and to be financially strong. I want the partnership with IUPUI and the Walker Center to be one of mutual benefit. I want my hometown to embrace the possibilities that a revived Indiana Avenue would bring. It took a comprehensive and holistic master plan to destroy a once thriving neighborhood. It now will take an equally robust and intentional plan to revive the neighborhood and will require the cooperation and support of multiple stakeholders from city and state government, as well as from the private sector and among community and nonprofit organizations. I was invited to speak today because of my personal connection to Madam Walker and my past links to the Walker Center, but I care just as much about the community. If the building is saved, but everything around it that referenced the people who once lived in the community is erased, who will it serve and how will it sustain itself? As the Madam Walker Legacy Center begins its new phase, and as the development of 719 Indiana Avenue is sorted out, I can't help but think about the IUPUI parking lot on the south side of the avenue. I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I can't help but wonder what it would mean to transform that section of asphalt into the kind of welcoming space set forth in a visionary Indianapolis cultural trail proposal 15 years ago. I know I'm not the only one who has those dreams. And it really is not a major leap because the most recent IUPUI master plan calls for mixed use development for that part of campus. I've been a trustee at Columbia University in New York for 13 years. It's been a period of major expansion, which has allowed me to see how an urban university navigates its relationships with the surrounding community. Columbia has worked very hard during the last decade to become a better neighbor and to repair the damage that was done to its relationship with Harlem residents and leaders over a failed development project in the late 1960s. It has taken time to build trust, but it was what had to be done. I am at a stage in life where I have everything I need, even in a time of pandemic. And that puts me in a position to think about legacy and values and what I can do that might benefit the next generation of leaders. I look at Indiana Avenue and the new generation of leaders who want to claim a stake in the legacy their grandparents started. I admire their resolve and determination. It is no small task to create a movement that led to more than 300 remonstrators registering for a Department of Metropolitan Development hearing. Like many others, I was impressed and uplifted by the Black Lives Matter mural that a dozen young Indianapolis artists painted on Indiana Avenue last summer. I see myself in them. They want to contribute to their community and offer their talents. I left Indianapolis after college in 1974 because I didn't see a place for myself. Over time, I was welcomed onto boards and given a chance to participate. But by then I had made a life elsewhere. But I continue to be drawn back home because of my deep family ties, not just Madam Walker, but family who migrated from Kentucky in the early 1900s and free people of color who arrived in Indiana in the 1830s from North Carolina and eventually made their way to Noblesville and Indianapolis. I think very much about what they valued and what Madam Walker valued. She placed great importance on education, affordable housing, social justice, institution building, and heritage. When the Walker Building was constructed almost a century ago, it was for the benefit of the community. In 1917, when Madam Walker hosted her first national convention of her sales agents, she told them, "Your first duty is to humanity. I want others to look at us and realize that we care not just about ourselves, but about others." During the convention, she gave prizes not only to the women who had sold the most products, but to those who had contributed the most to charity. At the end of the convention, the women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. That spirit of political activism carried forward through generations of beauticians who years later helped to pay for the buses that took people to the March on Washington in 1963. I have been on enough nonprofit boards and worked in enough corporate settings to understand that a business or an organization must be fiscally sound. But those entities are much stronger and much more consequential if they also are serving a larger purpose than simply making their numbers. If we are to honor Madam Walker's legacy, we must make sure that the good of the community is incorporated into whatever comes with future development. Thank you very much.
Wow, loved your comments. Thank you. And thank you for still caring enough about Indiana to come back and be candid with all of us on how you see the world in Indiana Avenue. Also, I appreciate, and I know everyone appreciates your diligence in looking at the recent Economic Club speakers, people who we think are true visionary leaders in Indiana, and especially now. Your comments about Indiana Avenue and redlining, I think makes us all a bit uncomfortable, and that's for a good reason. So thank you for that. I think we've had a couple of starts and stops with the revitalization in that area. What's next? Where is that at now?
Well, there are a number of people who are working on ideas and development. There are developers who are very interested, and there's this project, the 719 development, actually the developer has withdrawn. So that, I think, provides an opportunity for other people to present ideas. And as I say, if people will take a look at this presentation that we made with Indiana Landmarks, you can see there's so many possibilities of reimagining that space of both sides of Indiana Avenue, how they would mirror each other. With IUPUI, nobody at IUPUI has told me what they want to do, but I do think there's an opportunity for a conversation about that. Mm-hmm. I want to mention also Justin Garrett Moore, who's from Indianapolis, who right now is the head of urban planning and design in New York City. And I know another great talent from Indianapolis, but he presents a vision of an overall development for Indiana Avenue. Olin Dotson, who is an Indianapolis native, who's a professor of architecture at Ball State, worked with one of his students to create an alternative design. So we will see what happens. The conversation is very much ongoing at the moment.
Great. I want to spend a couple of minutes on Madam Walker. And in doing your research, I think you've called her a genius, and you've, in what ways was she a genius? In her
time? She was marketing. When you think about Madam Walker being born, Sarah Breedlove, on a plantation in Delta, Louisiana, two years after the end of the Civil War, orphaned at 7, married at 14, widowed at 20 with a daughter, and a washerwoman until she was 38. But she absorbed the lessons that from the women in her church who were in leadership role, who were club women, who were suffragists. And she took some of those lessons about organizing women and turned that around and empowered other women. But for me, she really was a marketing genius, because I look at how she used advertising, how she trained other women, how she gave women the skills to become economically independent. And it came out of her own experience.
Yeah, very good. Well, and you may have answered part of this, but who were her mentors?
It was really those women in the church. When St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church, when she was still a poor washerwoman, she did have a good enough voice to be in the choir. That meant she could model herself after what some of those more middle-class women were doing. Jessie Batts Robinson, in particular, was a school teacher and a member of her church and a leader in a national women's organization. Alice Kelly, who later became the manager of her factory in Indianapolis, had been the dean of girls at a Black boarding school. Tyrone McKinley Freeman, who is a professor at the IU School of Philanthropy, has just written a new book, which is behind me, called Madam Walker's Gospel of Giving. And I love that Tyrone has taken some of that original research that I did and expanded it to really take a deeper dive into who mentored Madam Walker and how her philanthropy grew.
Really good, great stuff. Especially for many of our companies now, we're doing planning for next year, and that whole gospel of giving or rewarding giving, I think resonates with a lot of us.
And today is Giving Day. So
today is Giving Day. It is, yes.
We know from all the emails.
Did you learn anything about the city of Indianapolis or Madam Walker in all your research that surprised you when you went through that process?
There is such great, rich Indianapolis history. The Indiana Historical Society is an absolute treasure. You know, another place that really benefited from Lily Largesse. It is so full of information, and I think people don't, you know, people may not go. They don't know what is really there. The exhibits that are there right now, the Madam Walker exhibit is just one example where you really get immersed in the experience. But as I was doing research, it was just really interesting for me to learn about the migration of people who settled Indianapolis, what the Indianapolis spirit was. And there has been, I think, one of the things that I notice about having grown up there, this real civic spirit of developing the city. And I certainly, my dad, who many people knew, my father, Henry Bundles, was the founding president of the Center for Leadership Development and has had a great impact on many generations of people in Indianapolis. But I watched what he did as he participated among the leaders of the city, and I could see just what civic spirit there is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've gotten a couple of questions about the Netflix series and your reaction to that. So could you give us a little color around that?
Sure. So, you know, it's amazing. And I think anytime a book actually becomes a movie. So I'm told that's a minor miracle. And I had been I finished my book On Her Own Ground in 2001. So it took a long time and went through many iterations. I was very excited to have Octavia Spencer playing the role of Madam Walker. And I thought she did a great job. As many people know, I was less than enthusiastic about the script and some of the storylines. I would have done it quite differently, but I am glad that more people know Madam Walker's name, that I've gotten a lot of Instagram direct messages from Brazil and Portuguese. So that means people know about her who didn't. But I do think her story is a much broader, much more expansive story. The writers of the script sort of reduced it to a catfight between two women and really focused on an imaginary competition. When, for me, Madam Walker's life is a story of empowering other women and philanthropy and social activism and building a business. So, you know, I hope people will read my book On Her Own Ground and Tyrone's book, Gospel of Giving, and that maybe they'll be entertained by the Netflix series, but don't take it as fact.
Yes, thank you, helpful. Okay, I've got a lot of questions here. I'll just hit a couple of them. What is your vision for mixed use in the area, and is jazz coming back to Indiana Avenue?
That would be great if jazz came back to Indiana Avenue. But I also would love to see incubators for entrepreneurs and for tech. You know, you think about the way that some of the other areas have been developed on Virginia Avenue with restaurants and Massachusetts Avenue, Broad Ripple, you know, which has been there forever. But you think about the kind of village and the kind of community spirit that is created. I would love to see that walkability along Indiana Avenue so that it's restaurants or shops or galleries. You know, are these things economically sustainable? You know, we have to see. But a partnership with IUPUI and with all of the talent and all of the resources that are there in the business school and the informatics school and architecture and design, there is a way, I think, to create some partnership with all of the stakeholders participating. So I'd love a neighborhood that maybe feels like Broad Ripple or feels like Fountain Square, but that also is creating economic opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, I've gotten a few messages, and the general theme is you've got a lot of business leaders on this call. How can we help?
So I think that supporting the Madam Walker Legacy Center, very important. It's, I was on the board, I haven't been on the board in more than 10 years, but it really has never had a sustainable business model. Sponsors for programming, really important. Really developing a robust development plan that helps to create an endowment at the Madam Walker Legacy Center is very important. And I just think that listening to some of the young leaders who are trying to be at the table and some of their ideas, we have to reach beyond the people who we already know and incorporate some new thoughts and some new voices.
Yeah, absolutely. So my final question to you is, how has Indianapolis changed over the last 30 years since you've been here?
Yeah, I love coming home. When I was growing up, there were like 3 restaurants that I remember. We went to Sam's Subway to celebrate report cards because my brother Lance and I always had really good report cards, and that was fun to get cheesecake with strawberries on it. For fancy dinners, we went to the King Cole.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember going to St. Elmo's when I was growing up. I'm not sure why, but we didn't go to St. Elmo's. But really, you could count the nice restaurants on one hand, or maybe there were more, but those were the ones that we went to. Now, when I come home, it is, well, I don't know. I guess the pandemic has probably affected a lot of restaurants. But I was in Indianapolis every 3 weeks a year and a half ago. My brother Lance had cancer, and I will say, I would just do want to say thank you to the Simon Center, more Indianapolis philanthropy, because he got fabulous care while he was going through that. But when I would come home every 3 weeks, my friends Michael and Zula Barnett always had a new restaurant to go to. So we had some great food. And I love how the cuisine scene has changed in Indianapolis. It's wonderful to see the development along the canal. I love going to the Indiana Historical Society, the museums, the investment in culture, very important. So I'm really proud of my town. It's a place that my friends who go to conventions there tell me they love going to.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate that. This has been a tough year for us in downtown Indianapolis. So you're energizing us to make sure it continues to be fabulous for everybody. Thank you for your great comments. Any question you wish I would have asked you that I didn't?
No, well, I'm just really glad to have the opportunity. And, the conversation about redlining is not to make people uncomfortable, but to help them understand, why we are where we are, and then to think about ways that we can move forward so that, we take into account what has happened in the past, but we build on that and really try to make sure that voices are incorporated, and that that we're having some vision about who we are as a city and who we are as a country. So, I love my hometown. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts, and I'm really looking forward to working with folks who want Indiana Avenue to be a vibrant place again.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you get a chance to read the chat, because there are a lot of former North Central people. I'm one too, that are saying hi to you. And thank you so much again for your candid remarks and your true passion about Indiana. It really shows through.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. And you are welcome, of course, to stay in for the conversation behind the conversation. As I mentioned earlier, this is something new we're doing. If you have another 10, 15 minutes to hang on, viewers, please go ahead and do that. Also, I want to remind you that today's presentation will be available online at economicclubofindiana.com. And please join us next month on Tuesday, January 26th, to hear the Chief Executive Officer of Genesis, Tony Bates. Be sure and register for this virtual event on the website. Information for each of this season's presenters can be also found at economicclubofindiana.com. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Rebecca Hutton of Leadership Indianapolis to begin an addition to the luncheon series, The Conversation After the Conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for having us today. Welcome to our first conversation after the conversation. I don't know about all of you, but so often one of my favorite things about attending the Economic Club luncheons is the conversations that happen afterwards in the hallway as you're kind of walking to your car, as you're walking through downtown, and sharing the tidbits of what stood out, what really resonated. So we hope that even though we're not all together in person, this gives us a few minutes to just think about what are the big takeaways that we have from Alilia's comments, which were outstanding. And I feel like I could spend the rest of my day just doing research on the things that she was saying and the recommendations that she was making. As Kathy said, I'm Rebecca Hutton. I am president and CEO of Leadership Indianapolis. In short, we develop and support civic leaders who collaborate for the greater good. That's our goal, is to make sure that Indy has a robust pipeline of people who are committed to doing the best for our community. I'm very, very excited to have two storytellers with us today from Indianapolis to kind of share some of the things that they are taking away from the conversation today. So first we have Tamara Winfrey Harris, who many of you know is Vice President of Community Leadership and Effective Philanthropy at Central Indiana Community Foundation. She's also an author. First book was The Sisters Are All Right, and her upcoming book is Dear Black Girl. We also have Samson Levingston with us, who is a storyteller with Through Two Eyes. He does walk and talks about the history of Indiana Avenue. And I have to admit, I kind of fangirled him a little bit this summer because I live on Indiana Avenue. And so I would see him doing tours, and every once in a while I would just kind of eavesdrop for a few minutes. So I'm so excited to have both of you here with us today.
Awesome, blessing to be here for sure.
So I want to just jump in. Again, our conversations can be fairly short here, but I want to jump in and find out from you, what were some of your big takeaways from Alilia's remarks? I will just say first off that for me, one of the things that I wrote down that I think is so important, and we think about the story of our community, both its past and as we are shaping its future stories, is when she said that she left Indianapolis because she didn't see a place for herself. And for me, I think that that is so important for civic leaders to hold on to, and to remember that we have to make sure that people see themselves in the city, and that lots of people see themselves and have a place for themselves in the city. And it's also one of the things that strikes me about the work that you're both doing, is that so much of your work is about making sure other people see a space for themselves or have relationships. So Tamara, can you talk to us a little bit about how you are doing that with the books that you've written?
Sure, and I just want to point out, so what you said actually connects to what my takeaway was, and that is, you can't serve a community and do what's best for it. You can't understand its past or plan for its future unless you actually listen to the community. And that is especially true when you're talking about community members that are historically marginalized, like the Black people who made up the community along Indiana Avenue. And I have this pillow that I actually got from another African-American historic location, Hammond House in Atlanta. And it has a quote on it from Miriam Makeba. And it says, "They came, they conquered, they wrote. You don't expect people that came to invade us to write the truth about us." And I think that's why it's so important to hear from people like Alilia, who can tell us what Indiana Avenue's real richness was, what it looked like, how she experienced it, who can tell us about the genius of Madam Walker as she saw it, and can help us plan for the future. And so in my work, I've tried to center Black women and Black girls' voices, because people often talk about us and talk at us, but don't listen to us. And when you're not listened to, you're not regarded. And then you're not part of the solution, and you're not part of the people that, the powers that be see when they're solving problems or taking advantage of opportunities. So in my first book, I looked at the ways that stereotypes of Black women have followed us over hundreds of years and affected how governments and cities and partners and employers view us, and then actually interviewed more than 100 Black women across the country about, okay, but what are our lives really like? So to get that voice. And then in my next book, I have Black women talking to Black girls, because we used to be Black girls. And more than anyone else, we can help them through the pitfalls and the joys and all of those things. I think uplifting voices of people that don't get heard enough is so important.
Yeah, and Tamara, I think what you're talking about directly ties to what Alilia was saying in terms of the people who really mentored Madam C.J. Walker were the other women in the church and in the community. And so there's a responsibility both for younger women to listen to those stories and to seek out that wisdom, but also for those of us as we get older to make sure that we are bringing other people along and we're sharing those stories and that we're mentoring those that are coming up behind us. Hey, Samson, what about you? What was one of your big takeaways from Alilia's remarks?
Well, it was good to hear just kind of how she looks at urban renewal. And it's one thing that I'll say on the tour often, and it's I hadn't heard Baldwin say it before. The way he said it, I wrote it down, is that, urban renewal is Negro removal. And I'll just say it's Black removal. And so when you're looking at, you got to remember that people were already living there. When Lucas Oil Stadium's built, it wasn't just vacant land for a future stadium. No, there was community there. There were people there. So think about all the people that were on the avenue and kind of how they were marginalized and kind of disregarded as that was happening. And then also to hear her talk about the Indiana Historical Society as someone who talks about history all the time, all day. Indiana history, I've dedicated my life essentially to Indiana history. And this is a picture that I show on the tour of Madam C.J. Walker in this drop top Ford right here in our electric car in Indianapolis. And that car is actually at the Indiana Historical Society. You can see it, stand by it. And these are powerful Black women right here with their photo taken in the early 1900s. And to show that, to feel that, and just to think about all of the power that was on the avenue and that sense of community, that sense of pride, that sense of wanting to be there because your people are there. That's something that it's hard to recreate, but it's amazing that it once ever existed here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things, and Alilia mentioned it, right? If you walk down Indiana Avenue right now and you don't know any of the history,
right,
you can see empty parking lots.
Historical markers, they gave us like 4, maybe 3. It's nice to just validate some of the stuff we talk about, but you have to show pictures. The whole 400 block is gone. If I don't show you a picture of the 400 block of Indiana Avenue, you won't know that anything was ever there. And it gives you a sense of pride to know that our community made a lot of something out of a lot of nothing. We took pride in the area that no one else would, and we developed it and we made it home. And it's a beautiful thing. Talk about that walkability, Alilia said. A walkable neighborhood, anyone who's ever lived in one knows how great that is. A walkable neighborhood. You walk to the grocery, you walk to the cleaners, you walk to school. That was right there, right? That was right there, and they erased it like it never was.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking through my notes, the comment that she made was, those who know the history see things differently. Mm-hmm. And so Samson, I just want to say, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing in doing these walk and talks and helping people understand that history who maybe didn't know it, particularly walking them through Indiana Avenue and these spaces, because it's very hard for us to reimagine the future and what it could be if we don't pay attention to the past, right? Both these empty parking lots, but recognizing that these empty parking lots were these amazing, thriving businesses. This was a strong community. They've not always been those empty parking lots.
And the erasure of, Black people's contributions nationally and locally, like, you know, obviously the Black community loses because of that. We lose our icons, we lose our communities, all of those things, but everybody loses, because Madam Walker's story is powerful and iconic, and there's a lot to learn from it, not just for Black people, not just for women, not just for Black women, but for everyone. Like, what an amazing story. Indiana Avenue is this amazing story of culture and art and entrepreneurism. And if we don't recognize that and preserve that and allow it to live, then we all lose.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, the creativity of a community, right? To see it develop, to see it grow. Everybody envisions something that they can make for themselves, something that they can have for themselves. And when you're forced to, it becomes a little different. But still, despite everything that was put upon us, the red line and keeping us in these districts, keeping us in these areas, keeping us south of Fall Creek, we were able to make something so beautiful, so empowering. When we walk by the Senate Avenue YMCA, you see Madam Walker standing there. That's a Young Men's Christians Academy. Lead donor, Madam C.J. Walker, right? So you see that spirit of philanthropy, and you see her willingness to help build her community up, help support her community. And it takes people like that, people invested in the community right there, that live there or invested in it. And it was a beautiful thing to see. And when you learn about Madam Walker, you learn about the Avenue, it's not to make people sad or uncomfortable, but it should really inspire them. Look at the resiliency of these people. If I could just tap into that just a little bit, I just couldn't believe what I'd be able to accomplish.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think that's part of the thing too, is that inspiration that we get from Madam Walker's story, and the history of Indiana Avenue is amazing. But you also, the story communities are told by certain people, right? Like, not everybody gets to tell the story, or not everybody's story gets listened to equally. And so when we think about how we tell the stories of our communities, particularly communities of color, which have historically not always had a seat at the table, whichever tables you're talking about, those stories have often been told through a particular lens or with a particular agenda attached to them. So how do the two of you, in this work that you are doing, how do you carry that responsibility of the narrative that you're sharing about these communities, whether you're talking with Black girls, whether you're talking about Indiana Avenue? I think that as storytellers, as people who are sharing these connections, there's also a responsibility that, and I don't want to say a weight, but it can feel like a weight. There's a strong responsibility, right? Like, we don't want to mess up the story of Madam C.J. Walker, because it's incredibly inspiring, which means, like, we got to get it right. So how do you manage that responsibility in the work you're doing?
I think you've got to listen to voices. You got to listen to the voices tell the story. You know, I do a walk and talk. I don't call it a tour because, and it is, but I want to have a conversation. Like, I generally am trying to pick up from whoever I can the stories of the Avenue. As I walk through Ransom Place, as I hear Alilia Bundles speak, it's just adding to me tell the story. I get to the mural as we're walking down the Avenue with those 8 great Indianapolis jazz artists, and I look them in the eyes like, I hope, you're always like, give me some more inspiration for the story, man. I want to tell this story right. Like, you guys are icons to me. And I want to, and it is a tremendous burden, tremendous pride though, in telling those stories. I saw some people ask about how to sign up for a walk and talk. It's just through2eyes.com, THROUGH, the number 2, then EYES.com. You should see the walk and talk button. But yeah, and we were talking yesterday, Tamara, about just kind of how you listen to other voices. And you said some really good points yesterday too.
I think one of the things that's important for everybody is to look beyond ourselves and think of all the intersected identities that we all have. So even as I'm writing about Black women and Black girls, which is a thing that I am, I am a Midwestern, middle-class Black woman of a certain age. And there are a whole lot of other I'm not a trans woman. I'm not a Southern woman. I'm not, there are so many different identities that women have. And I need to talk to all of those people if I want to understand the fullness of Black womanhood. And so I need to make space for, all of the different voices. And I think whatever we're doing, we need to make space for all of the voices so we understand the fullness of our community.
I'll just to touch on that, one thing that I've really learned and embraced and been inspired by is uncovering this history that I didn't know about. And it particularly comes from Black history, women's history, Native American history. And then recently I've been on this kick of really trying to, because members of the community, the LGBTQ plus community, reached out to me and was like, hey, you're so good at finding out this history, find mine. And I'm like, would love to, and so it's like, you have to be willing to look for this stuff. I believe you will find what you look for, right? We're so connected. So if you look for ways to connect us to tell the story, you'll find them. If you look for ways to divide us as you tell the story, well, of course you'll find those too. And so I really take a tremendous pride in trying to figure out the ways that all of these stories intersect to make the story of the Avenue. And so as we walk down it, it's just kind of a unique way to connect us,
Yeah, one of the things that Alilia said was that if the building is saved, but the people are erased, and I didn't get the rest of her comment, but like that idea that it is important to save the building, right? Yeah. Like it's important for all of us to be investing in the Walker Center and ensuring its sustainability and its success, because it is if you call yourself, if you wear the Indie t-shirt, if you have that Indie pride, then that should be a key part of something that you really care about, because it
gives you a place. That's what Alilia talked about, not having a place, not feeling like she had a place. People make the place, right? And when she talked about the walkability of the Avenue, I was almost jealous. Like, man, these restaurants, like I'd want that. I'd want to experience that. The people make the place. And so once you remove the people, right, it's easy to see how everyone was walking to these businesses, right? So how are they going to be supported as frequently as they were before when you remove the people? The people always make the place. And so it's good to keep the place for people to go to, but you got to have the people there. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to figure out with all of the Reclaim Indiana Avenue and with different talks like this. How do we make people just as much as part of the place as they always have?
Yeah, so as we wrap up here in the last few minutes, I just want to ask if was there any other big takeaway from Alilia's comments that are like, and again, I know that I had a whole long list myself, so not all of them, but like, is there something else that she said or that you're carrying with you walking away from this conversation today that like you really feel very strongly about?
I guess I'll go ahead. For me, it was just as she touched on, not everything that's faced can be changed, but for something to change, it has to be faced. Like, this history is real, it's raw, it may be uncomfortable. When I talk about, and Alilia said it too, Madam C.J. Walker was born Sarah Breedlove. She was born on a plantation, right? She's the first one in her family born free. That may make people uncomfortable, but it happened. And look at what she did. So let's talk about what happened. Let's face it, and maybe we can change it, but we got to face it first. We have to face it.
Yeah. What about you, Tamara? Any other parting thoughts?
The thing that this reinforced to me is the importance of Madam C.J. Walker, the Walker Building and Indiana Avenue and Indianapolis's history. I am not a native of Indianapolis. I'm a native of Gary, Indiana. And when I moved here, it took me a while to learn about Walker, like Madam Walker, and the history of Indiana Avenue, and it shouldn't have. That should be a history that's front and center when you come to the city, and I hope to see a time when that happens.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for being with us and being willing to have this unscripted conversation in front of a lot of wonderful people. Real fast, I know that there was some talk in the chat box, but just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to hear, Samson, if folks are interested in joining one of your walk and talks or getting more information, where can they go?
Yeah, through2eyes.com. That's this is how the tour starts, but just THROUGH, the number 2, eyes.com/walk and talk. All right. So it's a great way to just feel like you're a part of it. You're connected to it. Now your story has intersected with the avenues. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Fantastic. And Tamara, if people want to find more about your books, where can they find that?
Want to learn more about me, they can visit tamarawinfreyharris.com. And may I also suggest that, inspired by Madam Walker, you might want to visit CICF.org and look into the African American Legacy Fund of Indianapolis, which is a new fund that was started to provide an endowment for Indianapolis so that we can preserve some of the important things about the community and fund things in the community that need to happen. So it was funded by the Black community, and you can give to Alfie at the CICF.org website.
Fantastic. Thank you both for the work that you're doing in ensuring the stories that are being told, both the ones that have already happened, but also shaping new stories as we go forward in our community.
Thank you to Elia again for
Yes.
and coming with so much information. And thank you. You are phenomenal. Okay, I walk and talk about your family all the time, and so it's good to speak to a member of the family after doing all these tours about Mount T.J. Walker and being so inspired by her. It was awesome to just sit here and hear you speak. And I think a lot of the panelists, as well as the people who were just watching in the gallery, are really grateful for the time you took out of your day and the preparation you did for this. So thank you so much.
Well, I just love what you and Tammy are doing on a regular basis, and Rebecca. It really does give me hope. I know that this story is going to continue to be told, and I'm really looking forward to the time when I can be there in person and take your tour and get back to whatever our new normal is going to be. But it's so important that this conversation happen. I really enjoyed what you all were just now talking about. And I really think that we are in a moment where we will be able to create something beautiful and visionary. There were enough people listening today who are in a position to make a difference. And I think that we're going to do that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for sharing the story and helping us find ways to continue to stand on her shoulders and move things forward. We would love to hear everybody else's big takeaways from the conversation today too. So throw those on social media. Make sure that you tag the Economic Club of Indiana and Leadership Indianapolis. One of the ways that we move forward is by learning from one another and insights from one another. So let us know the big takeaways that you had from Alilia's comments as well. And then don't forget to register for next month, where the event's on January 26th. We're going to hear from Tony Bates, CEO of Genesis. And then remember to stay after for another conversation after the conversation. Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon.